What's up, guys? I recently attended the Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys community hearing regarding their charter renewal. And what I heard from the Office of New Initiatives, if these rules were applied to every school in Baltimore City, majority of them should be closed. Let's take a listen to what Miss Angela Alvarez had to say about the charter renewal process for Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Angela Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of New Initiatives. And so what I want to be really clear about my purpose today in this meeting is to explain the process and how you can get involved in supporting the school and making a case for the board.
So to be fair, she was presenting to the community on how to get involved in the process of showing support or showing continued support for this particular school.
The purpose of the meeting, I'm going to walk through the process and all the steps, and then give you information about how you do that. Okay? Sounds good? And then I'll take questions at the end if you have questions. All right. These are the key dates. So on February 14th, we will share at that regular board meeting start at 6. You can join virtually. They're a little bit hybrid, but there's not a lot of in-person seating right now.
So I'd like to point that out. It seems like civic engagement has been discouraged by continuing to hold these meetings virtually. Now, I do recommend there being a virtual option. However, they're also saying limited seating for in-person. So it seems like either a select few or, essentially they're restricting the public from knowing what's going on.
Able to join virtually, we'll announce the official recommendations. So right now we don't have an official recommendation. The school, just based on where they are in the ratings, are between two possibilities. And I'll get into that in a little bit of detail. But we'll share the official recommendation on February 14th. Letters will go out to families too with that official recommendation and the report that goes along with it.
So the recommendation she's referring to, a charter school has, they call it 4 options, but to me it's really 2 options. But one is you get to continue the school for X amount of years, and the other one is the school shut down. So the 4 options are 8-year renewal, a 5-year renewal, a 3-year renewal, or a non-renewal, which closes the school. So the options the Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys are between right now are the 3-year option and the recommendation for non-renewal.
On February 16th is the work session. So that's the opportunity for operators to make their case to the board. And so each operator has 4 minutes to present their case, but then the board asks them questions. So it's not a total of 4 minutes that they're up. And then the deadline for members of the public, so that's everybody in the school community, to send feedback. So you can send letters, you can make a video testimony, you have a variety of ways of sending feedback to the board. You have until February 20th by close of business that day to send feedback. And I'll go back to what needs to be included in feedback when we go deeper in the timeline.
So I will say this, if there was any indication of how Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys is run, to me it seems they're very well prepared, because one of the things that they had ready were letters for people to sign and plenty of additional resources to support the school staying open. So it seems, to me like they were very prepared for, this particular process and in maintaining and saving their school.
And then the board will make a decision at a special meeting on February 23rd. Okay? These are all public meetings. You're able to join, again, virtually at home. There is limited seating. To reach out to the board to see if you can be in person for some of those. But there's limited.
So you need permission to show up in person.
I wanted to be clear. So just in terms of the process, so every charter and operator school goes through this process that we call operator renewal. It starts in the penultimate year of their contract, and it looks over the prior 5 years. So it's looking holistically at the operator. So Baltimore Collegiate has had the same operator for that time. I know we have a new school principal this year, a new AP, but it's an evaluation of the operator and their role in overseeing and managing the school. And so schools go through that in that penultimate year, and then in that final year, starting in November, so this process started in November, letters went home to families at the beginning of November, sharing the process was started, and sharing some initial findings based on the data we had at that point in the year.
So I want you to start noticing the level of expectations that are placed on the charter schools, and the level of accountability that the Office of New Initiatives and the school are able to place on these schools as well. There seems to be this strict, stringent process that charter schools are subject to, but not the same process as traditional schools.
So that went home. That's on the website. So you can go now and look at the preliminary findings and the ratings that the school had in the areas where we had final data, which was most of the ratings. There's only a few ratings that we were waiting for to get to the official recommendation. The renewal process looks at 3 key areas of the school's life. It's looking at the overall academic performance of the school and how the school manages challenges, and that section is called Fidelity in the Charter. It's looking at what's happened with their assessments, how are they moving student performance. It's looking at the survey of teachers and staff that's called the 5 Essentials.
So I want to real quick put a point there in the students' performance piece. The charter schools in Baltimore City, are often faced with the challenges of getting the most challenging students or significantly challenging students to come to their schools. Oftentimes, and if you watch my last video posted on my channel, Mr. Edwin talks about the type of students that they send to the school. Oftentimes they send students that have been filtered around other schools, and then the traditional schools don't want anything to do with these students anymore. So they ship them off to or send them to Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys for them to fix them. And from the data and the numbers that they show, they've made significant progress. An example that Mr. Edwin gave was that the average reading level of the 4th graders coming in to their school, for a lot of them, was first grade. So they, a bunch of 4th graders coming into the school were reading on a first grade level. So that's creating significant challenges as is. And then they're getting these young men up to performing up to standard or up to grade levels within a relatively short amount of time. Now, every school is faced with its challenges. There's a lot of issues and obstacles that are faced in Baltimore City. But it's amazing though to me that there's this level of strictness put on the charter schools that the traditional schools don't necessarily have to maintain.
School that we've utilized in Renewal because it's predictive of school success. So schools that do well on that, this is research backed, have a 10 times more chance of improving student outcomes than schools that do not. So you'll see the ratings for the school in each of those areas in that. You also look at the culture and the climate of the school. So what's happening with suspensions, what's happening with chronic attendance and attendance. We're looking at, we also do a site visit that feeds into 3 of those measures. It's called the School Effectiveness Review. And so that site visit is looking at, and the school community participated in a site visit last year, but it's looking at a variety of things within a school. So in talented people, it's looking at staffing. How are staff supported within the school? What's the professional learning that the operator provides to staff? How do they evaluate staff? How are they evaluating the principal? How are they ensuring the operator, in this case the president, right, is operating effectively? How are they really overseeing that? It looks at just culture and climate. So it looks at what's happening with families. So there were focus groups some of you may have participated in, with families, with students, with teachers, with the operating board and partners. Trying to see what are the supports they're providing, what's the culture of the school, how they're dealing with challenges. It also looks at highly effective instruction. So there's the classroom visits and observations, what's happening instructionally within the school. There's also a review of documents, looking at the lesson plans, looking at meetings, the school community involved in decision making within the school. Is there real transparency with how decision making is made by the board, that
transparency,
the
that's
school,
funny,
and the school community on a whole. So those things are considered. And that also, how is the school providing programming to our students with disabilities? And so that is looking at what's happening with outcomes for students with disabilities. Are there disparities? What is the school doing about that? It's also looking at the practices. Are they holding meetings on time? Are they scheduling students appropriately? Are they making sure students are getting all of their services and all of their accommodations? Are they meeting the legal requirements that are required by for serving students with disabilities? And so that's reviewed by our Office of Special Education. It includes a site visit as well as looking at all of the data and the evidence that's provided.
all these rules for charter schools, but the traditional schools don't have to follow them.
In that section, we're looking at the audits of the schools. The school's in good standing. Are there any findings that make us think the school may go under? Like, are they able to pay their bills? Is there any issue with their cash reserves? Is there any issue with just like their spending? Are they following good internal controls? We also look at a measure called operating capacity. And now we're looking at, has the school had any issues with following key federal, district, or state requirements? Have they gotten any accountability issues?
Like, a lot of this stuff is laughable because we've seen so many reports come out of about the status of the things going on in Baltimore City Schools, particularly surrounding accountability and transparency. I mean, I think there was a news organization that had to submit a FOIA request, and then the information they got back from city schools was all redacted. So it's just interesting to note that these words of like accountability, transparency, are all thrown around from, in regards to charter schools, but they don't affect or apply to traditional schools.
Have they managed their grants well? Have they mismanaged their grants? A lot of charter schools get grants, both state and federal grants. We're talking about millions and millions of public funds. But have they managed it appropriately?
Yeah, millions and millions of public funds. Have they managed it appropriately? Great question.
And then we also look at, from that site visit, the pieces that are about board management. So it's looking at the board minutes. How is the board making sure that the school is operating well in all of the areas? What does that look at? So those are all the things that go into the review. So if you go online on the district website, you will be able to see. You just type in operator renewal, you can go and see the report and see what the ratings are so far for the school. In the process, there is judgment, but there is a rubric that goes along with it. And so if in any area a school ends up with not effective in any main key area, which means that they have a lot of not effectives for developing in those sections, that could lead to a non-renewal recommendation. Baltimore Collegiate's in a place where in a number of areas there's a lot of not effectives and developings. It's right next to it. And so while we're finalizing on the new information, they're in a place where it could be between a recommendation for a 3-year renewal.
She definitely seemed to get a little bit nervous at this point.
To make sure you knew how serious this was, so that you could participate in supporting this work. Okay? The decision makers on this is our Board of School Commissioners. And so they're going to take into consideration, so every school that goes through renewal submits an application with their evidence. So they submitted this application in September, beginning of the school year. And it's based on, they prepare, like I said, that penultimate year, so it started last school year, in preparing to go through this process. So this is a routine process for operator schools. And so that application is considered by the board. The rubric itself, so the ratings and the findings that we found in Renewal, the site visit, the 5 essentials report, all those things have reports that go along with it, additional reports. All of those things are considered. And then what they hear from community, that matters a lot. It's very disruptive to close a school. It's a very serious thing. So your voice is a really important part of this. So what is the community saying? What is the community experience? And so while there is some of that already in the process, you participating by writing letters, being present in those meetings, and sending feedback to the board is very, very important, okay? It's essential. So the preliminary, some of the key things that we found so far in the preliminary recommendations is mix of ratings. So there was effectiveness in that vision and engagement that comes from that site visit that I talked about and explained. So that area was found effective. That's where it's considering how the school builds a community. Is it living the mission that it promised the board and the public that it would do? And are they creating a welcoming learning environment for students? Is it a safe space for students to learn? Areas of weakness, so they were not effective in operator capacity. There are challenges in the operator capacity section, so there were some issues with students with disabilities there. There's some issues with grant funds there. There's some issues with providing required courses there. So that became an area of not effective. They're developing fidelity charter application overall.
I kind of wonder what those required courses are. I'd be curious to find out. I tried to check the actual report, but it doesn't list any of the challenges specifically. It does mention the areas that they're not effective, but it doesn't show what specifically would correct that issue or improve a particular area.
That's the place that looks at that application. And in the application, asks them a lot of questions. Schools are really complex places. So how are you managing if you're having a challenge in student data? This student group is not doing well in math, or this student group is not doing well in English. How are you doing that? Is putting extra tutoring in place? Do you have effective data cycle and making sure that teachers know how to be responsive to instruction? So it looks at all of those pieces. And then in the 5 essentials, they were not effective. So this is just a summary. I recommend looking at the
So the 5 essentials is a survey, by the way.
On the district website, and it has the ratings for every area where we had data so far. The areas that we're waiting for updating and finalizing have to do with the MCAP. So we just got the MCAP results, and so that impacts a rating called absolute. It's just based on that year's results, as well as an effective programming for students with disabilities, because this recent MCAP is part of that measure. So those are the main areas we were waiting on finalizing the ratings for those particular areas.
Now, if they're going by MCAP scores, a majority of Baltimore City schools should be closed as well. So I guess good luck with that.
Which will go out on the 14th. So in terms of doing next, it's being involved. Just like how you showed up today, the most important place to show up is with the board. Right, that is important. So making sure you're showing up, you're sending letters, because everybody in the school community, students, parents, partners, sharing letters of support, sharing what the school means to you, that's really important in the process. If the board does make the decision to close the school, I just want to be clear about what that means. Does not mean that the school closes like in the middle of the year. If the board approved that decision, it would close at the end of the school year, so I wanted to be clear about that.
So that would be the 23 school year.
If
So
that
I mean the
happens
22-23 school year.
additional meetings with
So this school year.
families to provide support around placement for next year, support for staff, to make sure they get placements for next year. It kicks off a series of actions to support the school community transition if that happens. Right now, we don't have a recommendation yet. So we'll have an official recommendation on the 14th. And then the second piece is the decision is in the hands of the board. And so the board is going to vote on February 23rd. That's a really, really important date.
All right, guys. So next up is the question and answer section, which there's just one question and answer that I want to cover in this video, and I think it's the question that most people are probably asking. So I'm gonna just go ahead and roll it. Is there a different procedure for closing charter schools than public schools?
In terms of that, since Sandra Lisa's been here, she had gotten $100,000 raise for public schools to fail, and here's a school that's succeeding. So how do you come after a school that's doing exactly what we want to do?
So Santa Lisa, of course, is the school board CEO of Baltimore City Public Schools. It's been reported that her salary, her compensation package is upwards of $400,000. Quite frankly, she makes more than the president of the United States for a school district of 82,000 kids. As a matter of fact, that number is wrong because I think it's under 80,000 kids now because not only is our school population shrinking, but the city is just shrinking as well. So she's making more money for less students going to the school, traditional city schools, as well as the schools underperforming, on a national level, state level. But schools that are, attempting to do the right thing in the community and have shown signs of success. These are the schools that are being closed. So I'm gonna just go ahead and let her respond to this question.
Yeah. So there is a different process for recommending a school, a traditional school. They're all public schools. They're all our schools. But for recommending a traditional school for a closure versus a charter school. Charter schools have a contract with the district. They're making a promise to the district.
So
and to you guys as families and community.
So I thought that was interesting that she said, the schools are the charter schools are making a contract. They're making promises with the community. So what promises do traditional schools make? I mean, this is, thousands or millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money going into traditional schools. Are we just sending that money there with no promises, and then only the promises that exist are those that go to charter schools, or is there some type of responsibility that the schools do have for receiving taxpayer dollars? Are there promises that the public schools are actually making?
That they are going to deliver on certain things. Right, so part of the work that we do with authorizing and operating with these outside entities that are supposed to be operating on your behalf are getting millions of dollars in public funds, right?
Interesting.
And we step back and they're managing it, is that they have to deliver on what they promise. And so that's a key thing. And so that's the difference. Where with a public school,
I'm not really seeing the difference.
Their recommendations are more looking at what's happening with academic performance can come up. Are they sustainable? We've had a number of schools that have been undersized. Like, are we able to provide enough resources? Is the facility in good condition? So there's different things that can trigger it, but it's not a routine process for a traditional school as a charter school.
So you see that she just said that traditional schools are not held to the same standard as charter schools, and that charter schools are often recommended to be shut down because they're not living up to those standards. So they have the option to not renew the charters of these charter schools. if they're not living up to certain standards. Now, I get it. They are supposed to be holding charter schools accountable. However, where is that accountability with traditional schools? If every school in Baltimore City was a charter school, I think we see some different outcomes with our education. If Baltimore City traditional schools had to go by the same rules as these charter schools, then I think a lot of schools would probably be shut down in Baltimore City. So I just wanted to come share that with you guys. I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on this process. Should all schools in Baltimore City be charter schools, and parents get the choice of where they send their kids to, or do you agree with the process or the procedure that Baltimore City Public Schools has in place to maintain accountability with these charter schools? And also on the subject of accountability, what do you think about Baltimore City Public Schools' capacity to hold schools accountable, especially charter schools, but not traditional schools? So guys, share your thoughts and let me know. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Peace.